Hello everyone, it's Myeong today. I am going to read S6 6045. Arthur Plays the Blues. Chapter 1. Wonderful, Arthur, said Mrs. Cardigan. Really? Absolutely. And I should know. Mrs. Cardigan was Arthur's piano teacher, the only one he had ever had. The fingers are flowing with the keys, sometimes lightly, sometimes with a vigor and strength, but always with feeling. Arthur played a few more notes. Excellent, Mrs. Cardigan went on. You have really got Edelweiss down pat. If I close my eyes, I can see myself in the Austrian Alps. She took a deep breath. Goodness, that air is fresh. Arthur smiled. Should I try the left hand now? In a minute, dear. Mrs. Cardigan opened her eyes and pushed back a strand of gray hair. We have to talk about something first. I know. It's about the other piece. I promise I'll practice it for next time. Miss Cardigan sighed. Next time, that's what we have to talk about. I'm afraid there won't be a next time. You see, I am retiring. Arthur gasped. You're what? She stood up and went into the kitchen. I should have told you before, she called out, but I kept putting it off in case I changed my mind. Arthur blinked a few times, but you haven't changed your mind, I mean. No, Mrs. Cardigan shook her head. It's the right thing for me to do. Arthur frowned. But I thought only old people retire. That's sweet, Arthur, said Mrs. Cardigan, returning with a plate of cookies. But the fact is, I am old, at least a long way from being young. And there are other things I want to do besides teach piano. She handed him a cookie. Here, they are chocolate chip, your favorite. Art always looked forward to cookies at the end of his lesson, at least until today. He took one to be polite, but he didn't even taste it when he took a bite. What'll happen to me? Asked Arthur. I'll never get to Carnegie Hall without your help. Mrs. Cardigan patted him on the shoulder. Don't be so sure about that. Your new teacher is actually a concert pianist. My new teacher? Arthur repeated. Miss Cardigan clasped her hands with excitement. That's right. I've been saving the good news for last. I've made some calls, and you're going to be taught by none other than. She pointed to a poster on the wall of a long-haired man hunched over a grand piano. Dr. Frederick de Fugue. Fugue. Arthur examined the poster closely. Dr. Fugue's expression was very serious. Even his fingers looked serious. They perched over the piano keys like an eagle's talons. That's him? Arthur gulped. Indeed it is, said Mrs. Cardigan. Dr. Fugue is very experienced. He's in high demand for concerts, but he always saves time for a few special students. One generation must light the way for the next. He likes to say, Arthur sighed. Well, he may be great, but I bet his cookies aren't as good as yours. Chapter 2. Arthur hoped that a good night's sleep would make him feel better about Mrs. Cardigan's news. Unfortunately, it didn't the next morning. His head was still in a swirl, so he went off to the playground, thinking a little fresh air might do him some good. He was hanging upside down from the monkey bars when Binky appeared before him. Your face is getting red, said Binky. That's the blood rushing to my head, said Arthur. I'm hoping that'll help. Help what? Arthur swung back around so that he could look at Binky right side up. My piano teacher, Mrs. Cardigan, is retiring. The news is making me dizzy. She is the one who bakes the great cookies, right? Binky frowned. No wonder you're upset. It is not just that, said Arthur. Everything with Mrs. Cardigan was so comfortable. I know. She liked me, and I liked her too. She didn't give me too much to practice or too little either. Everything was just right. Now I have to start over. He sighed, and I'm worried about my new teacher. You already know who it is? Oh, yeah, said Arthur folded his arms. Mrs. Cardigan wouldn't want to leave things up in the air. She's a very thorough. She's arranged everything with Dr. Fugue. The Binky's mouth dropped open. Dr. Fugue? No way. Well, yes, said Arthur. I can't believe it. You're going to be taught by Dr. the Frederick Fugue? Boy, some kids get all the breaks. Is that good? Asked Arthur. Good? He's not just good, he's the best. If there were piano teachers on Mount Rushmore, he'd be the first head. I'd give anything for just one lesson with him, even without the cookies, and I don't even play piano. Really? Arthur looked pleased. I had no idea. I guess it's an honor. I'd say. Binky rubbed his chin. Of course, it'll be a challenge. You know, your fingers might break from all the scales he makes you do. It can't be that bad, said Arthur. You're just exaggerating. Binky laughed. Am I? Try telling that to my friend Mikey. He took lessons with Dr. Fugue for 3 months and he still can hold an ice cream cone with only one hand. Arthur put his own hands in his pocket. Oh, and one more thing. Watch out for the knitting needles. Knitting needles? Arthur took a deep breath. Dr. Fugue uses knitting needles during the lesson. Binky nodded. What for? You don't want to know. Just make sure you stay on the beat. Binky paused. Good old Fugue, the ferocious. I admire your courage, Arthur. Arthur frowned. I don't want you admiring my courage. Well, I do, I suppose, but not in this case. I don't want to need courage for piano lesson. Well, it is too late now, said Binky. Be brave, be fearless, and most of all, beware. Chapter 3. This is the place. Are you sure? Mr. Reed checked his direction. It's the right number. This is the only old Victorian house on the block. Do you want me to go in with you? Arthur shook his head. No, I'll be okay. He got out of the car and walked to the front door. Before he could even knock, though, the door swung open. A tall, pale man with long, limp hair stood before him. He extended a spidery hand in welcome. Arthur Reed, I presume. That's me. Arthur extended his own hand, but instead of shaking, Dr. Fugue pulled Arthur's hand up to his nose for a closer look. Moderate digital spreading and no calluses. I imagine you've been playing for 2.5 years? Yes, I thought so, said Dr. Fugue. Follow me. As they went inside, Arthur heard his father honking a farewell. Dr. Fugue cringed. Ish. C sharp. He should get that tuned. They moved on to the living room. Arthur noticed holes in the rug, stuffing comic stuff, rug and stuffing coming out of the wing chair. A bird tweeted in a cage. By the window, Dr. Fugue clapped his hands at her. Adagio, Tosca, adagio. The bird looked nervous and tweeted more slowly. Although the rest of the room was a mess, the grand piano was a gleaming masterpiece. Wow, said Arthur. It's beautiful. Dr. Fugue ran a finger over its surface, checking for dust. Her name is Giselle. She's been around the world with me, from Vienna to Carnegie Hall. Arthur's mouth dropped open. You have actually played at Carnegie Hall? Yes, many times, but that's enough chit-chat. Let's hear you play. Arthur sat down at the piano while Dr. Fugue paced behind him. We'll start with some scales. D major. Arthur began to play. All right, now C harmonic major. A minor, D major again. The time flew by, but Arthur had no chance to notice. He was too busy jumping from one demand to another. Tempo, snapped Dr. Fugue. Finally, when Arthur felt like his fingers might begin falling off his hands, altogether Dr. Fugue said the magic words and stopped. Arthur took a deep breath, and another, and a third. That'll do for today. It appeared that you might actually have some talent, Mr. Reed. Therefore, I'd like you to work on this for next week's lesson. He handed Arthur a book of music. Arthur gasped, "But this is Bach's two-part invention. It has like a million notes." No, no, only 8,955, and each of them is perfect. Let's begin with the invention in F major. Arthur stood up from the piano. I'm not so sure I can. He stopped because Dr. Fugue had reached into basket and pulled out a pair of knitting needles. A genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So naturally, you must practice now. What were you saying? Arthur's face had paled. Nothing. Invention in F major, right? He snatched up his coat, mumbled a hasty goodbye, and ran out the front door. Chapter 4. Arthur sat at his piano, staring at the music in front of him. 8,955 notes? Oh boy, he muttered. Mrs. Cardigan would never have given me something so hard. Just looking at this makes me tired. He closed his eyes, but instead of seeing blackness, a line of half notes and a quarter note danced in front of him. Wee! Arthur opened his eyes. There was D.W.'s voice. It was coming from outside. Arthur got up and looked out the window. Just to make sure she's all right, he told himself. D.W. seemed to be fine. She had collected a large pile of leaves and was jumping in them. She thought. She shouted again. Arthur frowned. It wasn't fair that he should be cooped up inside while D.W. had all the fun. Besides, when it came to jumping in leaves, her technique was not perfect. A little sister could use a big brother's great expense to guide her, and out he went. The next day, Arthur planned to practice again, but Francine rang the doorbell just as he was heading for the rang the doorbell just as he was heading for the piano. She wanted it. She wanted it. She wanted to play. She wanted to play football, and how could he let down a friend in need? 2 days later, there was a book fair. Arthur couldn't miss that. Everyone knew how important reading was. Arthur made sure he explored the fair from one end to the other. It didn't take many more excuses before 5 days had passed. On Saturday morning, Arthur was making breakfast and outlining his day. First, I'm gonna help Buster carve his pumpkin. Then I'll... Hold on a minute, Arthur, said his mother. I think you're forgetting something. Oh, right, Mom. Buster asked me to bring that special carving tool. I didn't mean that. I mean the piano. You do remember the piano, don't you? Of course. Arthur said slowly, the dancing notes appearing again in his head. Well, your lesson with Dr. Fugue is in 2 days, and I don't think you have practiced at all. Well, I have thought about practicing, said Arthur. I've thought about it a lot. Doesn't that count? Do you think it'll count with Dr. Fugue? Asked his father. An image of knitting needles suddenly replaced the dancing notes in Arthur's head. No, he admitted. I guess not. And this is your first real lesson together, his mother reminded him. You want to make a good impression? I didn't have to worry about that with Mrs. Cardigan. It's not fair. His mother smiled. You may not remember, Arthur, but there was a time when playing for Mrs. Cardigan made you nervous too. 1 hour, said Mr. Reed. Your fingers will thank you. What about? Buster's pumpkin can wait, and you will have to do another hour tonight to really catch up. But, no buts, Arthur. Mr. Reed stared at him. Finish your cereal and get going. Chapter 5. Arthur sat down at the piano, an oven timer at his side. He set it for 1 hour, 60 minutes, and counting, he said. He started to play, trying a few notes with only his right hand. His fingers moved awkwardly, stumbling over the keys. That's okay, he told himself. Just take it one step at a time. Suddenly, he heard a cow mooing. Then a pig oinked. Both of these noises had come from the living room. Arthur tried to ignore them, but they were soon joined by whacking sounds. Take that, he could hear DW saying, and that. Arthur rushed into the living room to see what was going on. DW was just sitting on the floor in front of a toy barn. Every time a farm animal appeared at a door or window, she tried to hit it with a plastic mallet. DW are making too much noise. I'm trying to practice piano. Go play in your room. I can't. Mom is cleaning up in there. Arthur folded his arm. What will it take to keep you quiet? Thought about it. Got any candy? She asked. Arthur gave DW some of his Halloween candy and sat down again at the piano. He started again with his right hand, but just when he was getting into it, he heard paper crackling. DW, why you are still making too much noise? DW walked in from the living room. I can't help that. I have to unwrap the candy before I can eat it. Stomped off into the kitchen where his father was just pulling out a tray of scones from the oven. Dad, I can't practice. DW is making too much noise. Well, that's not good. I'll take her out. It's important for you to be able to concentrate. Thanks, said Arthur. These smell great. A new recipe? A slight variation, said his father. Help yourself. And remember, no distraction. Arthur piled a plate with scones, got a glass of milk, and returned to the living room. He heard the car pulling out of the driveway, so he knew he was safe. Now I can play, but first I need my strength. Ate one scone, then another, then a third. He also drank the milk. Okay, he said, rubbing his hands together, invention in F major. Here we go. He began playing again. Before long, though, he blinked a few times, then he shook his head and stretched. That helped for a minute, but his eyelids grew heavier and heavier and heavier. He tried to open them, but it felt like someone had put a grand piano on each lid to hold it down. Finally, he put his head down and fell asleep. Ring! Arthur woke with a start as the open timer went off. He looked at his watch and yawned. Oh, practice is over. Well, that wasn't so bad. Then he got up and went to see how Buster was doing with his pumpkin. The end.